The election manifestos published by political parties to woo voters ahead of the November 20 election have largely been criticized for being too ambitious. General public have expressed their frustration over the repeated agendas, while experts opine parties have miscalculated their goals. As the polls draw close, rebel and independent candidates seem to be a bigger challenge to mainstream parties. Good morning, I'm Sarah Sapsanama. Let's begin with the top stories of the hour. Election resources reach all 77 districts, parties and candidates to hold election assemblies and campaigns from today. More than 300,000 security personnel to be deployed. Public and analysts express doubt over implementation of ambitious programs included in political party election manifestos, show no resources or generation plans. North Korea fires at least one long-range and two short-range ballistic missiles. Japan's Premier Fumio Kishida says one may have been an intercontinental ballistic missile. And world number 2 Rafael Nadal crashes out of the Paris Masters in the second round at the hands of American Tommy Paul. The Election Commission has delivered 57 materials, including ballot papers, in all 77 districts for the upcoming November 20 elections. The Commission has started delivering the election materials apart from ballot boxes and bars, as only 17 days remain for the polls. The Commission has said that 34 million ballot papers have been printed, while printing is underway for the remaining 4 million. The remaining ballot papers will reach all the 165 election constituencies by the 10th of November. In a press meet yesterday, the Commission assured of a turmoil-free election. The Election Authority has corresponded with the security departments for the same. The cut-off date for the candidates and parties to hold election assemblies and campaigns is the 17th of November. The Prime Minister, Chief Ministers as well as ministers must receive permission from the Election Commission to participate in election assemblies and campaigns. The Commission has asked the candidates to furnish the details of expenses incurred during the election campaign within 15 days of the polls. Around 300,000 security personnel are set to be deployed for the upcoming provincial and parliamentary elections. All the security departments are making final preparations to mobilize the security personnel, including temporary security personnel known as Madi Police. The security departments are ramping up surveillance in all 165 election constituencies under the Integrated Security Plan. The Armed Police Force has begun deploying all of its workforce except those required at the headquarters. The APF is deploying more than 32,000 security personnel for the upcoming election. Police base has been prepared in each electoral constituency under the leadership of the Deputy Superintendent of Police, while security forces are being mobilized to maintain security in the voting centers and stations. APF is also said to be deployed at 228 places to seal the borders on the election day. 115,000 temporary police recruited before the Dasai festival have already been deployed to their respective work areas. The temporary police will assist Nepal Police at the voting centers. Nepal Police Headquarters will deploy the security personnel from the headquarters, CIB and traffic police a week prior to the election day. Nepal Army is to provide 2,200 arms and ammunition to the police, while they will also undertake the responsibility of ensuring security at sensitive areas such as airports and prisons. Nepal Army bomb disposal teams are to set their base within a distance of 15 minutes from the voting centers. Nepal Army is also setting up its helicopter bases at Itahari in the east, Mahottari of Madhya Pradesh and Surkhet in the west for rescue purposes. The Ministry of Home Affairs has further directed to deploy 22 private helicopters. The ministry has listed 2,930 voting centers as highly sensitive and 4,478 as sensitive. Some of the major challenges during the election are to manage the groups that can cause chaos, clashes between political parties, and abuse of social media. Economic issues have continued to make it into the election manifestos of political parties. CPN-UML, Nepali Congress and Maoist Centre have all promised to raise the living standards with economic progresses. However, economists express doubt, saying that the parties have yet to fulfill their commitments made during the previous election. Nepali Congress has announced of ambitious plans, including employment opportunities to 1.25 million people, attaining an economic growth of 7% and establishing fertilizer factories. The main opposition CPN UML has committed of an economy of 10 trillion rupees, raising the per capita income of Nepalese to 300,000 rupees and expanding the Make in Nepal campaign to promote Nepali products. Maoist Center has announced it will establish 2 modern industrial centers in each province, cut down on industrial taxes to raise employment, and factories for the production of organic fertilizers. However, experts say that the parties have yet to fulfill or have only fulfilled around 10% of the announcements made in the previous election, adding that there was little evidence to believe that they would live up to the promises this time. Independent candidates with significant professional history pose serious challenges to candidates of the ruling coalition and the main opposition CPN UML in several electoral constituencies. The success of independent candidates in the local level elections held back in May inspired many for independent candidacy in the November 20 provincial and parliamentary elections. There are 867 independent candidates in the House of Representatives polls, while 1,090 for the provincial assemblies. This includes rebel candidates who left parties out of frustration of being deprived of election tickets and those with successful careers in the past. Former UML leader Ghanshyam Bhusal is up from Rupandehi 1 and is expected to give a tough contest to UML Secretary Chabilal Bishwakarma. Prabhu Shah, who left UML from Rohtahat, and Dinesh Koirala from Chitwan are also considered top independent candidates and are expected to produce shock results. Likewise, there are 100 independent candidates from 10 election constituencies in Kathmandu who are advocating for entrepreneurship, digitalization and active citizenry, apart from economic and social development and good governance. This is not the first time that independent candidates have won during elections. In the general elections held in 1959, 4 independent candidates had managed to defeat candidates from prominent political parties. It's time now for our segment Public Pulse, where you text us with your opinion. The question is, what's your take on parties releasing election manifestos with ambitious plans? Your options are A, deceiving the public, B, lack of accountability, and C, baseless plans. The voting is on. Type NEWS, select your option A, B or C and send it to 34001 to share your opinion with us. Now, in our Public Voice segment, we've asked how did they find parties' election manifestos? Let's take a look at what they had to say.
घोषणापत्र त पहिलाको जस्तो थियो त्यस्तै हो। पहिला पनि यही घोषणापत्रै लिएर आएका हुन् जनतालाई झुकाउनलाई।
सबैको 101 छ। तर त्यो घोषणापत्रमा जहाँ जे जस्तो लेखिएका पनि व्यवहारमा कसैले नि गरेका छैनन्।
भन्छ तर खै मलाई विश्वास लाग्दैन।
पहिला पनि त्यही थियो, अहिले पनि घोषणापत्र त्यही नै आछ।
पहिला नै चुनाव हुँदाखेरि यस्तै ल्याउने कारण चाहिँ के गर्ने हैन।
व्यावहारिक रूपमा हामीले वास्तवमा यही गर्छौं भन्ने खालको त्यस्तो होला जस्तो मलाई लाग्दैन।
सबैको एकदमै राम्रो घोषणापत्र आएको छ। त्यो घोषणापत्र अनुसार कार्यान्वयन हुनु पर्यो।
धेरै दलहरुको घोषणापत्र त परम्परा जस्तै छ।
विगतमा नि त्यस्तै आएको थियो सर, अहिले पनि त्यस्तै आएको छ।
पूरा गर्न सक्ने भन्दा पनि सस्तो लोकप्रियताले नै मतदाता रिजाउने खालको घोषणापत्रहरू आइरहेछ।
अब बिमार हुँदाखेरि गाडी घरै जान्छन् भन्ने त्यो पनि एकदम राम्रै लाग्छ हामीलाई।
पकाउने काम बाहेक केही पनि हैन।
विगतका वर्षहरूमा पूरा कार्यान्वयन नभएको हुनाले अहिले पनि पूरा कार्यान्वयन हुन्छ जस्तो मलाई लाग्दैन।
यो घोषणापत्र सबैको एउटै समान छ। व्यवहारमा लागू हुनु आवश्यक छ।
पुरानो घोषणाहरू जोड दिएछ, नयाँपन केही छैन।
रेल ल्याउने, पानी जहाज ल्याउने कुराहरू जस्ता ठुलठुला सपनाहरू देखाउँछन् चुनाव जित्नलाई।
पहिलाको र अहिलेकोमा केही पनि तात्विक भिन्नताहरू पाइदैन।
अहिले त्यस्तो बुझेको छैन हामीहरु कहिले।
राम्रै लागछ नानी।
सबैले राम्रो ल्याउँछ, तर सरकारमा पुगेपछि तथा जितिसकेपछि त्यसलाई व्यवहारमा उतारेको देखिँदैन।
Rasua Gadi border point is the shortest border point between Nepal and China for trade and human movement. Trade from this border point creates a direct impact on the livelihoods of the local residents. Although this border is often raised as an election agenda, it has been left ignored for the past 34 months. Rasua Gadi border point is often highlighted during elections, but no entity pays attention regarding the problems that persist here. The border has remained out of operation under several pretexts. Previously, around 100 containers used to enter Nepal every day from the border point, but the number of containers entering Nepal has now dropped barely to 14. Nepal used to export flour, chilies, bamboo, chairs, brooms, among 297 goods to China from the border point. However, Nepal has not exported any goods in the past 34 months. With more than 1,000 containers stranded, youths have lost their jobs and agricultural production has reduced as well. An integrated building is under construction in the Nepali territory. Several other problems related to the dry port, customs yard and road linking the border point to the capital continue to persist. Every election, the candidates assure smooth operation of the border point in their campaigns, but political parties and leaders are yet to pay any attention to ensure the same. Let's move on to the international update. North Korea has fired at least 1 long-range and 2 short-range ballistic missiles, according to South Korea's Joint Chief of Staff. Japan's Prime Minister Fumio Kishida has said one may have been an intercontinental ballistic missile. A day after Pyongyang launched its most missiles in a single day, including one that landed near South Korea's territorial waters, Seoul responded by firing 3 missiles of its own. North Korea's multiple launches comes as the US and South Korea are staging their largest ever joint air drills, which Pyongyang deemed aggressive and provocative. The launch today morning led the Japanese government to issue a rare emergency alert to residents in some of its northern regions, telling them to stay indoors. Japan's Prime Minister Fumio Kishida condemned North Korea's repeated missile launches, calling them an outrage. It comes just a month after North Korea launched a ballistic missile over Japan, the first time it had done so in 5 years. The North has tested a record number of missiles this year as tensions have risen. Pyongyang has conducted 6 nuclear tests between 2006 and 2017, despite crippling sanctions, and is believed to be planning a 7th. Now, UNESCO has released a report saying that regardless of the temperature rise scenario, some of the world's most famous glaciers, including the Dolomites in Italy, the Yosemite and Yellowstone parks in the US, and Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania, will disappear by 2050 due to global warming. The United Nations Cultural Agency UNESCO monitors some 18,600 glaciers across 50 of its World Heritage sites and said that a third of those are set to disappear by 2050. While the rest can be saved by keeping global temperature rise below 1.5 degrees Celsius relative to pre-industrial levels in a business-as-usual emission scenario, about 50% of these World Heritage glaciers could almost entirely disappear by 2100. World Heritage glaciers are defined by UNESCO, represent about 10% of the world's glacier areas and include some of the world's best-known glaciers whose loss is highly visible as they are focal points for global tourism. The report's lead author, Thales Carvalho, has said that World Heritage glaciers lose, on average, some 58 billion tons of ice every year, equivalent to the total annual volume of water used in France and Spain together, and contribute to almost 5% of global observed sea level rise. Carvalho added, this could lead to coastal erosion, but also a higher risk of cyclones, storms and tsunamis. He said that the single most important protective measure to prevent major glacier retreat worldwide would be to drastically reduce carbon emissions. UNESCO recommends that given the inevitable further shrinking of many of these glaciers in the near future, local authorities should make glaciers a focus of policy by improving monitoring and research and by implementing disaster risk reduction measures. The parties in the conflict in Ethiopia's northern region of Tigray have agreed on permanent cessation of hostilities, the African Union mediator has said, just more than a week after formal peace talks began in South Africa. Former Nigerian President Olusegun Obasanjo, in the first briefing on the peace talks, said that Ethiopia's government and Tigrayan authorities have agreed on orderly, smooth and coordinated disarmament, along with restoration of law and order, restoration of services and unhindered access to humanitarian supplies. Speaking at a news conference, the agreement marked a new dawn for Ethiopia. The war, which broke out in November 2020, has pitted regional forces from Tigray against Ethiopia's federal army and its allies, which include forces from other regions and from neighboring Eritrea. Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed hailed the breakthrough deal and said it would be implemented. The conflict, which has at times spilled out of Tigray into the neighboring regions of Amhara and Afar, has killed thousands of people, displaced millions from their homes and left hundreds of thousands on the brink of famine. Neither Eritrea nor regional forces allied with the Ethiopian army took part in the talks in South Africa, and it was unclear whether they would abide by the agreement that has been reached. And that's all for the moment. Our next English bulletin will be at 3 p.m. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.